Yeah, boy! Poggers! That felt really good. Oh, nice. Hello, the name's Alpern, and this is the second Commander tier list for Company of Heroes 2 in 2021. Today we are taking a look at the OKW faction, which has a total of 9 commanders, which you can see on the screen. And of course, starting off here with the first commander, none other than the Breakthrough Doctrine. I'm instantly just going to go ahead and put this bad boy over at the B tier, which, if we take a look at the abilities of this commander, it's of course known as the Jag Tiger commander, and it's a decent, I would say decent, not very good, but it's useful in team games, but less so in 1v1s, so this one is a bit special. Depending on which game mode you play, this will be less or more useful. It of course has access to the Panzer Fusiliers, together with the Breakthrough Tactics and the Sturm Officer. Together this makes a pretty good blob, if I may say so myself, in team games. For instance, in the mid game you could blob up your Panzer Fusiliers together with your Sturm Officer, force retreat a machine gun, click the Breakthrough Tactics button, and perhaps attack your teammate's opponent with a huge deep flank. The Jag Tiger itself, I feel, is a bit lackluster even in team games, but the blobbing potential with the other abilities, of course with the off map as well, it's quite alright. And if you really need one, it has the Jag Tiger, but it is one not amazing heavy tank, I will admit. Going back and taking a look at the next commander, it's probably the most controversial one on this list. It has seen some quite major changes recently with the recent commander patch. What happened was that they buffed one of the units in this commander, known as the Sturm Tiger, and it is quite strong. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this boy at the S tier location. And take a look at the actual abilities here, where everything is pretty much useful. You got the 2-1, which can be upgraded to the 2-3. This is a super early light vehicle, which you can get as soon as you have an SWS truck deployed. It bullies most of the allied forces, because none of them really have access to snares by the time this appears. If you're facing Soviets, for instance, he's forced to take snares for it, or maybe even get a PTRS on his penals. It can tango somewhat with the M3 and the UC, but it does require some support. Other than that, it also has the emergency repairs. It has the Panzer Commander, which allows your vehicles to drop down artillery. It also has access to the heat shells for all your vehicles, which is absolutely amazing. And of course the Sturm Tiger, the hero of the day, so to speak. It's quite a controversial vehicle. It kills pretty much everything, and it does it with style and a huge explosion.
Oh! Yeah! Yeah, boy! Look!
And next up we have none other than the Feuersturm Doctrine, which has access to the MP40 upgrade for your Volksgrenadiers, essentially turning your Volks into close corner units. They also get access to a smoke, which I think is what makes that upgrade actually worthwhile. They would be very lackluster without that smoke. And if you spam it, it's way better than the actual grenade itself, which they also have access to. Other than that, this commander also gives you the flame rounds for your leagues, as well as the heal track, which is a bit interesting because you would imagine the heal track is if you go mechanized. But if you go mechanized, you can't really build leagues, so essentially you can take this commander in 2 different routes. Personally, I like going mechanized with this, but if you do go battle group, you can actually skip light vehicle and get a very early hetzer. the Hetzer does not require you to actually upgrade your Schwerer HQ, your tier 4. So all you have to do is you have to place it, and then you can get the Hetzer out, which is quite nice. Especially if you skip a light vehicle, it can hit quite early. But it is a bit strange, because then you don't really use the heal track, so it's kind of hard to get a commander bingo with this one per se. Usually you take it in 2 different routes, where you maybe spam leagues with flame rounds versus emplacements or something, or you go the mechanized heel track, Puma, whatever, Stuka perhaps route. And it's quite useful, I think, in both scenarios, both team games and 1v1s. It's alright, it's not meta defining, but it's fun to play, and I think it's definitely useful. With that said, we are going to put this bad boy on the not meta but useful location, which is the A spot. And moving on, we have the Fortifications Doctrine, which is probably Commander's, or OKW's rather, only bad commander in my opinion. It does have the S-mines, or it used to. Nowadays it's kind of hard to use them, because they have been moved from the Volksgrenadiers to your Sturm Pioneers, and your Sturm Pioneers are already overworked, so you would usually rather have them on your Volks, so that's a bit of a nerf for this commander. Other than that, it has the pack 43, which is cool. It can kill priests. And it also has access to the LEFH artillery, which is nice, but there are a better commander which has access to this, which we will see in a second. The zeroing artillery is okay, but none of these abilities are anything extraordinary, and this is by far OKW's, I believe, only C tier commander. Moving on, we have none other than the Grand Offensive Doctrine, also known as the Capen Offensive Doctrine. This is the 2nd Panzerfusilier commander, and if you compare it to the Breakthrough Doctrine, it has access to a different Tiger, of course being the Tiger 1, which is personally a better option in most scenarios. Especially since the Jag Tiger is kind of underperforming in my opinion, and it's also slightly cheaper, so it will have a better timing. Other than that, there is more useful stuff in this commander. You have the Stuka Smoke Drop, which also doubles as a recon. So what you can do is you can smoke with it like an MG or a 80 gun position and roll up with your Tiger. And you can like spot with it for your Stukas or your artillery or whatever if you have a teammate, for instance. You also have the STG-44 package for your Obersoldaten, which is amazing versus cloaked units. It's a very strong counter versus commandos, for instance, or if you're having trouble with partisans, this is also a really good counter because of the infrared spotting range. They will spot all the cloaked units before they ever get close. It of course also has access to the Panzer Commander, just like Elite Armored Doctrine has, which is a nice ability to have for your vehicles. You can drop in artillery. And it has access to the Tiger. It's a decent doctrine, especially for team games, I will admit. You don't see this as often in 1v1s. Used to back in the day, but nowadays it's just a decent doctrine. It's useful, nothing amazing. We're going to put this on a A tier in the tier list. Moving on, we have none other than the Luftwaffe ground forces, which, if we take a look at its abilities, has access to the Fallschirmjägers, as well as the smoke drop from the Capen Offensive, as well as the fortifications from the Fortifications Doctrine with the S-mines and the emplacements for your Sturm Pioneers. It also has access to the Valiant Assault, which works really well together with the Fallschirmjägers. Together you can make quite quite large pushes. It's definitely a overpowering way to just smash your way forward together with the Feuersturm Jaegers as an assault unit. Other than that, they work really well together with the camouflage to get the ambush bonus, which makes them really competent infantry. It also has access to the skill plane, which is not the best skill plane in the game, admittedly, but together with the Feuersturm Jaegers they can actually reinforce. So bundle that together with the Valiant Assault and you have quite a strong push capability here if you have the munitions to spend. Overall, it's a very strong doctrine, I think, but it's definitely not meta-defining, but it is useful, meaning it's a very solid A tier for our tier list. Next up, we have the Overwatch Doctrine, which we are going to A tier, which we are going to put on the S tier row. It's one of the JLI doctrines. The JLIs are of course some of the better units the OKW has access to. They can also camouflage and they have a huge natural vision, which means they can cloak and give you information, and together with the ambush bonus, same as the Feuersturm Jaegers, they can do some quite nice instant damage holding territory. This also has access to Goliaths, which is a bit memey, but you can get one or two off every now and then. It's essentially worse demos, but a bit more expensive, but people don't really expect it, so it's definitely quite nice to have. It also has access to For the Fatherland, which is similar to Valiant Assault, but more defensive bonuses. It also has the left edge. Comparing this to Fortifications Doctrine, you can quite probably see why this is so much better, considering it also has access to the best skill plane ability in the game, which is the Sector Assault. This was nerfed recently, it's now at 275 munitions, but it's still very much worthwhile to save for because of the free planes that are attacking pretty much everything while also doing recon, which is just very nice to have for OKW. Moving on, we have the next JLI commander, which is Scavenge, which personally I find is a bit worse. It did have some changes in this recent patch. That Furrows salvage ability also gives Volksgrenadiers another upgrade, which allows them to repair, which is kind of nice if you lose your Stern Pioneer and you don't want to spend 300 munitions for a repair unit in the late game. You can just get the Volks to get this upgrade for some fast repairs. Other than that, your JLIs will also have access to the infiltration tactics, which is nice. It's the spam nades. You can throw them out of camo, which is just quite strong. It's quite abusive, but it's useful stuff. It also has the Ostwind, which works similar to the Hetzer, that you don't need to upgrade your Schwerer. So say you go battle group with this and then rush out the Schwerer HQ. Instead of getting a light vehicle, you can get a very fast Ostwind, which most people don't really expect.
You think you're P for as many kills?
It also has access to the 105 howitzer barrage. It's not the best barrage in the game, but versus emplacements it's quite nice if you have a lot of munitions in your bank. The more munitions you have, the more artillery shells will be fired. Meaning if you have, say, 400 munitions in a team game, you can pretty much delete any emplacement using this once. Which is nice. So we are going to put Scavenge on the A tier for useful. And the very last OKW commander is none other than Spec Ops, which has been meta for quite some time in the past. It's probably the most used doctrine in OKW overall throughout all the years. It does see a lot less play now. We have had nerfs for this commander pretty much every single year. And this most recent nerf, or more of a rework actually, nerfed radio silence, but they also added the Sturm officer while removing the flares and adding the flares to the Panther instead. So you can still get the flares for the recon, but you need to get the Panther out first, which you usually will anyway, but it is delayed. You can't go mechanized Stuka and spam flares first. First you need to get the Panther before you can get the flares. So essentially the power level has been slightly delayed. And of course you can't really abuse radio silence in the same manner that you could in the past. I still think this is probably a extremely solid commander, and I do expect to see some Sturm Tiger nerfs in the future, and if we do, I would say this is probably your go-to S tier in 2v2s and higher team game modes. For 1v1s it's alright, it has a very solid package, it's just nice, it's good to have for OKW, and everything here is useful. With that said, we're going to put this on A tier, but I think it's a solid S tier contender if the Sturm Tiger gets nerfed, which would probably add it around here, and the Sturm Tiger would probably move down to A tier, because the rest of the package here is also really solid. Overall, this is how I would judge the OKW commanders, with Spec Ops being on A tier. I think these two are just so far ahead of any of these options, but at the same time all of these options are more than viable, which just shows how quite well how the OKW factions commanders are quite well balanced. You only have one quite useless option, but even then this still has some good abilities, but like it's competing with these ones, which makes it not really a solid pick. But that is all for me today. That is my final say on the OKW Commander tier list. I will try to get the other ones out the following weeks. I know I've been kind of slow on this one. I mean, we had some patches and there was some news about the CoH2 coming up, so I've been doing some other things. If you want to ask me anything, check out my Twitch. I'm live a lot. You can ask me anything you'd like to know more about, or if you'd like to see more. You can also follow me on Twitter, and all the links for everything is down below. Cheers! Please leave a subscribe or a follower, and I'll see you hopefully next time. Bye bye!
What is this ability?